it's Geoff Chalmers here. I'm the founder of discoverdouble-bass.com. It's an online educational resource for double bass players. There's loads of free video lessons, and if you haven't had a look, maybe you want to check them out at the end of this lesson. In this lesson, we're looking at two things: how to set the height correctly for the double bass and how to stand correctly with the double bass. We're looking at issues of posture. And there's also a follow-on lesson from this that you might want to have a look at after this lesson, which covers how to sit correctly. So let's get started and look at how you can achieve a really comfortable, natural standing position. The double bass is such a large instrument that if you aren't standing correctly or sitting correctly, or the height's not right, you won't be able to align your arms in the right way and your hands in the right way to achieve good technique. So if you're new to the bass, or if you just want to make sure that you're building everything you do on great foundations, this is a good lesson to watch. Now, one thing I just want to mention to you is there are a lot of different ways to play the double bass, and the area that we cover today is quite subjective, but I've looked at this in detail, and this is my way of showing you. This is my suggested method. I think it's the easiest method. I think it's the one that will help you the most and is easiest to understand. But of course you will find other bass players who are playing with different posture and techniques, but I think that it's certainly worth considering this one first. Okay, so let's have a look how you set the height of the bass. First of all, extend your end pin a couple of inches and bring the bass upright, stand pretty much vertically next to it. So not really in a playing position, just alongside the bass. And let's have a look and see where the nut is. This is the reference point that we use to make sure that we have the correct height for the bass. And it should be roughly in line with your hair, the top of your head. Now we're not in playing position, so let's move back into playing position. I'm going to take a step backwards, and I'm just going to check that I'm upright, I'm vertical, and so is the bass. So there's not a kind of angle. We're both upright at arm's length, and that will be the correct way to bring the bass towards you, and it should lower it down, and hopefully, let's have a look. Yeah, it's somewhere about in line with the top of my eyebrows. It could be just above the eyebrow. It's just, if I turn and look directly at the neck, it will be slightly out of my line of vision. We don't want it to be too high. We don't want it with our hairline, because one of the problems is that you'll end up having to raise your left hand above your head. And for me, I think that causes problems. Your hands will go numb. It makes the whole thing a lot harder. As I said earlier, people do it a different way. I think this is the easiest. So how did you bring the bass towards you then? Let's have a look. I'm using the palm of my hand against the heel of the neck. I'm just grabbing the bass like that. And again, pushing it out. You'll probably have to move around a bit. Here we are. Okay, I've got to the point that my arm's just nice and relaxed and straight. I'm upright and the bass is upright. And as I said earlier, you pull it back into you to align the nut. So the bass is on an angle leaning towards you. That's really important to get that right. Now let's have a look at what part of the bass is touching what part of the body. It's this part here. This is the corner where the back meets the rib, and mine's pretty worn away here where it's been resting against my body. And you'll notice that it's not flat like this. And this is what anyone who picks a double bass up who isn't a bass player will do. They'll stand with it kind of behind like this and, oh, this is great. Well, what you want to do is to actually have it resting against you on this angle. So it's balancing against your body. That's the key thing to remember. It's not flat against it, it's balancing there, and it moves as you play, which we'll have a look at in just a second. We've got the corner of the bass here. What part of the body is it resting against? Well, it's somewhere from the center to the side. For me, it's in between those 2 points, and it's just above the belt line. My belt's here, and it rests against my stomach in the middle of in between the 2 points, from the middle of the body to the side of the body. Now, what's to stop the bass falling over, and either to the right or to the left? It can't go forward because it's leaning into us. Well, the left, it's our left hand. We don't support the weight of the bass with our left hand, but if the bass is moving in that direction, that's the way that we stop it. How do we do it in this direction? That's with your left knee. Now you'll notice I've been standing with my legs I'm just stood normally, essentially. But if I want to control the bass with my knee, I just have to move my left knee forwards, and you can see here, is touching the bottom bout, which is this area of the bass, the back of the bass here. And I can actually balance the bass like this. This stops it moving away from me to my right. If it went back to my left, I'd have to grab hold of it with my hand. Okay, so it's a great thing to do, just practice standing with the bass, because the better that you can balance the bass, the less that you'll be grabbing hold of it. Okay, now I said to you earlier about how we don't hold the bass and support it in position with our hands, but conveniently, for jazz musicians particularly, there is an action that we do in performance that also helps balance the bass. If I just get comfortable a second, and that's playing back onto strings with the right hand. That movement naturally sort of keeps the bass in place. And if with the left hand, the movement, I'm not pushing down and forcing my hand into the fingerboard. I'm using my arm weight, which is something that we talk about in the left hand lesson. But the actual process of playing the strings actually pushes slightly in this direction just to help support the bass. Again, we're not holding it with our hand, but the actual motion of playing will help keep the bass in the correct alignment. Okay, just have a look at a couple of more general points about the way that you're stood. Maybe this is something, maybe you're making a few mistakes here that we need to correct. I always recommend practicing in front of the mirror, and this is really useful. You can't monitor what you're doing unless you can see yourself. So make sure that you're practicing in front of a mirror. Check that you're not doing any of these things, that you're not balancing your weight onto your right leg. I used to do this a lot, and particularly when I was doing the corrective stance, and you end up putting all your weight onto your right leg and it causes issues further down the line. Check that you're not reacting, that the scroll is in your zone by moving away and putting your head on an angle. I have a lot of students who I talk to and they're doing this all the time. So try and maintain alignment in your body. Keep your shoulders nice and relaxed, keep everything nice and even, and you should get really comfortable with the instrument quite quickly. Another problem that I see students do a lot is that they don't bring the bass towards them. And if they do, they end up with the bass really vertical. Now, I can think of one or two really good professional players who play this way, but as I say, I would recommend not doing so. One of the main reasons is, if the bass is completely upright, it can move away from you in that direction, which I think you can appreciate poses a lot of practical problems, and one of which is that you will have to hold it to stop it from doing so. So make sure the bass is about an arm length away and bring it back towards your body, and make sure that you're aligned carefully with the nut. You should also be able to comfortably reach the end of the fingerboard with your right hand. I really hope that you've enjoyed the lesson today. If you have, you can rate, comment or subscribe on YouTube. And if you want some more beginner double bass lessons, you can head on over to discoverdouble bass.com.